Hi friends! Recently some of my friends sold their apartment and it looks super expensive. They got a great price for it. The most interesting part, the design choices they made actually made the interior looks more upscale. So how can you make your home look more expensive? That's exactly what we'll talk about in today's video. Let's get started! First point, mixing classic and modern interiors. For example, you have a classic base, but you furnish it with modern pieces. This, first of all, looks super stylish, and second, makes the space feel more expensive. Classic design already feels luxurious, but when you mix it with modern elements, it looks even more upscale. What techniques can we use? One example, herringbone parquet flooring. In one of my first apartments, I used herringbone parquet. And not just on the floor, I even used it on the walls. This adds a bit of aristocratic charm to the interior. What other classic elements can you incorporate into your design? You can use baseboards and cornices, but there's a small catch. To use baseboards and cornices, you need enough ceiling height. I don't recommend them if your ceiling is under 10 feet. Otherwise, it'll feel like you forced classic elements into a space where they don't belong, making it look cheap instead of elegant. One of the key classic design tricks is symmetry. It's often used in palaces to create a sense of balance. Classic interiors, by nature, require a lot of space, large rooms, very tall ceilings. But if you mix them with modern elements, you can work with a smaller space. It's a blend of classic and modern design. For example, my first apartment was about 400 square feet, but I still incorporated classic details. Custom-made elements. Custom-built furniture with unique colors, rounded shapes, and a seamless fit against the walls, like a wardrobe that extends wall to wall, makes the interior look more expensive. Why does this happen? Because subconsciously we associate expensive designs with details like tall wardrobes, no gaps, a clean and organized look, and well thought out storage. Our brain reads this as a high-end solution. But keep in mind, custom-built pieces don't just look expensive, they actually are expensive. They usually cost several times more than freestanding furniture. Wall panels. Wall panels always look better than a plain painted wall. They add a cozy feel, especially if you use natural materials like real wood, which also makes the space feel more high-end. So, wooden panels and custom pieces, these are great options to elevate your interior. But what if you don't have the budget for custom-built pieces? When planning your space, try to align your furniture with a modular system. For example, about 20 inches module. Let's say you have a wall and about 6.5 feet space. You'd want to fit 4 20 inches modules in there. But don't forget about the small gaps needed for installation. You'll need about a 0.4 inch gap on each side. That way, your wardrobes will run seamlessly from wall to wall. There's another way. You can buy a standard modular system, like the ones from IKEA, and customize it. I did something similar in my first apartment. I built a frame around the sofa. You can check standard module sizes on popular websites that sell modular systems, like IKEA, for example. By the way, you can customize IKEA furniture with different fronts. For example, you can use IKEA's internal structure and order custom fronts elsewhere. This will give you a unique and stylish look. Now let's talk about space. High ceilings are usually associated with expensive interiors. If you have the option to have high ceilings, that's great. But what if your ceiling is of standard height? And on top of that, when you add engineering systems, install recessed lighting, attach drywall, and run cables, a standard 9.8-foot ceiling can shrink to just 8.2 feet, making the space feel lower. I have a favorite trick for this. In several projects, I left the original concrete ceiling exposed and avoided running electrical wiring or other systems above the living area. All engineering systems were placed in other rooms. This will visually and physically increase the ceiling height in just one part of the room. However, it will still create a sense of spaciousness. So how should you arrange lighting in the living area? You can use wall-mounted lights, floor lamps, or set up multiple lighting scenarios. This way, you illuminate your living space differently. You can also use reflected light. For example, near the high ceiling, where the ceiling drops for engineering systems and lights, you can create a niche. You can install a powerful LED strip in this niche, directing light onto the ceiling, which will then reflect onto the floor and areas like the living space. Vertical lines. When you incorporate many vertical lines, they visually stretch the ceiling upward. You can combine this technique with tall decor, making the ceiling appear higher and giving your interior a more luxurious feel. Another trick to make ceilings look higher is using perimeter niches. Essentially, the walls seem to extend into the niche, If you create these niches around the entire perimeter, the walls will appear slightly taller than the ceiling. This creates a lowered ceiling section where you can install lighting, while the perimeter gives the illusion that the walls extend into the ceiling, making it look even higher. How else can you work with space to make it look larger? You need to ensure that more of the floor and ceiling are visible. How do you achieve this? For example, your furniture doesn't reach the floor but is instead wall-mounted. In my apartment, for instance, I have a large cabinet that appears to float above the floor. And by the way, my robot vacuum fits under it. Another trick to make a space feel larger is combining multiple zones into one. A classic example is a kitchen living dining area. Instead of having a small separate kitchen, a small living room, and a small dining room, you create one large open space that integrates all these functions. Consider which areas you can combine. For example, this is often the case with a home office. How do you integrate a home office? You can either place a desk in the living area or create a separate room with a tall partition and a floor-to-ceiling sliding door. When you don't need a dedicated office, it becomes part of the kitchen living dining area. When you need privacy, you just close the door and you have a separate office where no one will disturb you. By the way, friends, let's interact. I want this to be a dialogue. Share your thoughts in the comments on how to make an interior look more expensive. Or tell me what tricks you've used in your interiors to achieve a more luxurious look. What else can visually expand a space? Well, the simplest example is mirrors. You can position mirrors so that they reflect interesting objects. For example, if you have a beautiful city view from your window, you can place a mirror opposite the window. As you walk by, you'll see the cityscape on one side and its reflection on the other. It looks really cool. So, when placing mirrors, consider what will be reflected in them. Try to position mirrors so they reflect something visually appealing. For instance, we recently visited an apartment where a large mirror was installed in the bathroom. It's placed above the sink, and if the floor-to-ceiling bathroom door is open, the mirror reflects a stunning city view. That's why it's best to place mirrors from floor to ceiling. This will add depth to your interior and make it look more expensive. Let's continue talking about expanding space. Nothing expands space more than a unified design concept. When you move from one room to another and see the same design elements, a consistent style and similar color schemes, it all feels like one cohesive space. This makes it look visually larger. What techniques can you use here? You can use the same materials throughout. For example, if you have wooden panels, you can use the same wood tone in different rooms. This also applies to flooring colors. For example, parquet flooring, if you use parquet, keep it consistent across all rooms. This brings us to natural materials. There's no denying that a beautiful marble pattern, especially in large format slabs, makes an interior look more luxurious. Marble has incredibly beautiful patterns, and you don't have to use it on all the walls. You can take one large slab and place it, for example, at the center of your bathroom entrance. The remaining walls can be finished with porcelain tiles or even just plaster. This way, you'll have one accent area that looks more expensive. Wood. I've mentioned in other videos that light wood makes a space look cheaper, while dark wood makes it look more expensive. If you like light wood like the one here, you can slightly darken it, but avoid wood that looks too much like plywood. What other natural materials can elevate a space that might not be so obvious? First, natural textiles, things like linen, cotton bedding, and natural curtains. Use materials that are organic and natural. They make the space look more high-end. Next point, there are beautiful metals. Some metals, like bronze, develop a patina over time. As metal ages, it oxidizes slightly, giving it a noble, sometimes greenish tint. You can use these metals with noble patinas to enhance the elegance of your interiors and spaces. Large furniture. Large furniture pieces themselves contribute to a luxurious feel in the interior. For example, a large sofa arrangement that isn't placed against the wall, but positioned in the center of the room. Large furniture pieces like these add a sense of luxury to the space, but what if you don't have enough space for a large living room setup? You can opt for a smaller sofa, but place it at the center of the room, or go for a double-sided sofa, like we've done in some of our projects. For instance, a double-sided sofa where the backrest can be moved from one side to the other. This means you can shift the backrest, recline on the sofa, and enjoy the view out the window. Or you can move the backrest again so the sofa faces the TV instead. Another key element is a large rug, a sizable piece that anchors the space. It also visually enhances the space, making it look more high-end. Why? Because it's simply large, a big, substantial item that we associate with something expensive. From large furniture pieces, let's move on to decor. To increase the value of your interior, you need to use large decor items. For example, large paintings that hang on the walls or stand on the floor, or large plants in big pots, or large pieces of contemporary art that complement your space. The key is not to buy a bunch of small jars or tiny souvenirs. Try to use large items. Don't be afraid of their size. Because in beautiful, expensive interiors, large, expensive decor is used. And a tip, if you use plants, it's better to keep windowsills free, so more natural light can enter the space. If you clutter the windowsills with decor or plants, less light will enter, and the space will feel smaller. And of course, aside from decor, your tableware also adds value to your interior. Your tableware should be in a unified style, it should be beautiful and preferably decorative items. It's best to select furniture and tableware in collaboration with a decorator. For example, in all my apartments, despite being an interior designer, I select decor and tableware together with a decorator. That's why it always looks beautiful. Fireplaces. A fireplace always makes an interior look more expensive. So what do you do if you don't have a chimney in your house? You can actually create a fireplace just like I did. You can simply install a portal and then place candles in the portal that burn with real flames. There are also many biofireplaces that can be used without a chimney. You pour special alcohol into them and a real flame burns, creating that authentic fireplace effect with live fire. Now let's talk about color schemes. Bright colors make an interior look cheaper. Complex colors make an interior look more expensive. Try to use deep blues, deep greens, deep reds. These complex colors add a touch of luxury to the interior. Is there any rule with colors? To make the space truly shine, you should use no more than 2 accent colors. Besides white and black, you can use 2 additional colors. For example, the color of wood and, say, an accent green. By the way, continuing the talk about colors, black, dark, and graphite interiors generally look more expensive than light interiors. So if you want to use a dark color and visually make the space look more expensive, it's perfect for that. By the way, black has a really cool element. It expands the space. Everyone is afraid to use black because it seems like it narrows the space. But in fact, dark color are the color of infinity. For example, we recently worked on a project in an apartment in a skyscraper and painted the ceiling and walls in gray, dark gray. And the ceiling and walls kind of disappeared, and it seems like the space is actually larger. Let's move on to lighting scenarios. Placing 25,000 built-in lights on the ceiling makes the space look cheaper. In fact, the modern trend in interior design is to place less and less emphasis on the ceiling. What's important here is making the space look more expensive. Different lighting scenarios. For instance, you have a pendant light over the dining area, and somewhere else you have accent lights on the walls, like floor lamps or sconces. You might also have some additional lighting, so you have light not only on the ceiling but also in other areas. And it creates these kinds of accents. This way, the space feels more spacious. Speaking of music, you can use the sound of waves, the crackling of a fire, or the sound of rain. It also includes technological solutions with projectors, various transformable elements, and different lighting accents. All media elements make the space more expensive, especially when they're carefully planned with various scenarios. Now, let's talk about windows. Dark windows generally make the space look more expensive. What if you have white windows and you can't replace them? There are 2 methods, painting and laminating. Generally, laminating looks better. Also, window reveals. Typically, if you want to make the interior more expensive, you can use reveals made of natural stone. Various marble textures look great. For example, there are black stones like slate. Typically, they are much cheaper than natural marble. It's not expensive like porcelain tiles and ceramics, and it looks stunning. In one of my projects, in one of my apartments, I equipped the windows using slate. Slate also looks very beautiful because of its uneven texture, creating a kind of rocky base. It's like you have a piece of rock made into your window. A good option is wood on the reveals and the windowsill, where you could essentially have one large wooden wall. Besides the visual picture you see in the photo, the space is also influenced by the atmosphere and how a person feels in that atmosphere. When you do full sound insulation and enter the room, you get the effect of being far out in the forest, even if the soundproofing is in your apartment in the heart of a metropolis. One of our clients did full soundproofing in their apartment, and when I went to visit them after we had completed the project, I really felt like I was in a country house, because there was no noise at all. How is sound insulation done properly? You need to insulate not just one wall like where there's noise, but soundproof the whole box. The walls around the perimeter, the floor and the ceiling. And besides soundproofing the walls, you also need to install very high quality, good double glazed windows that don't let noise through. But there are some downsides because full sound insulation reduces the ceiling height and lowers the wall height, as it requires at least 2 to 4 inches on the walls and the ceiling, and it requires expensive windows. And in fact, it's a very expensive solution, but it allows you to relax in peace when you come home with no outside noise distracting you. Let's talk about material joints, like the joint between the floor and the wall. All of this can be done with shadow moldings, which look very stylish and add detail to the interior, creating small shadows and subtle elements that visually make the interior look more expensive. So you can use these elements at the joints of your materials where two different colors or surfaces meet. They will create interesting, unusual light shadows and give the interior additional depth, a little extra detail and thoughtfulness, making the space feel more expensive. Handles. Handles on cabinets, handles on kitchens. All these items can be very neat and stylish. Usually, you can buy these items not only in the store where you order your furniture, but also look for and find expensive, beautiful, and unusual hardware. The next point is viewpoints and the view from the window. Nothing threatens the interior like a beautiful view from the window, but it's important to use this view correctly. I often come across a common mistake where people don't use the light characteristics properly. For example, they arrange the living area in such a way that it's easier to watch TV, but the view from the window is just terrible from that living area. For example, if you turn the sofa the other way and move the TV to another wall, you'll be able to enjoy not only the TV on your wall, but also a very beautiful sunset. So before arranging the furniture in your apartment, be sure to walk around and highlight the best viewpoints. Nothing makes the interior look cheaper like clutter, so if you want your interior to look expensive, you must make sure it's clean and free from visual noise. For example, make your bed. It will look great if you have 2 rows of pillows. Place larger pillows at the back and smaller ones in front. It looks just like in a hotel room, expensive and stylish. And of course, you can add an extra coverlet to the bed. The same trick applies to bed linen. It's better to choose a solid color, but make sure it contrasts with your bedding. A freestanding bathtub also visually makes the interior look more expensive. But there's a very important detail with freestanding bathtubs. If you have a freestanding bathtub, you should also have a separate shower nearby because it's very uncomfortable to shower in a freestanding tub. Water splashes everywhere, puddles form, and cleaning it up later is very inconvenient. So, a freestanding bathtub is only meant for relaxing in, and then you should get up and go shower. By the way, there's a great trick where a separate block is created with both a freestanding bathtub and a shower placed right next to the bathtub, all enclosed with a single partition. And inside this space, there's a drain that allows water to be drained both from the shower and from the splashes you made when bathing in the tub. And it's very important with freestanding bathtubs that the distance from the wall to the tub isn't too tight, but has some space around it. Because a freestanding tub actually looks cheap if you squeeze it between 2 walls. It needs space and volume. And of course, pleasant scents. Pleasant scents also make the interior feel more expensive because when you enter, your image isn't just visual, but it's also made up of what you smell and feel. And smells are a big part of our lives. So you can buy special air fresheners, special perfumes for the home. They will create a pleasant, luxurious atmosphere and complement your interior. By the way, friends, if you want to watch a video on what cheapens an interior, you can follow the link and watch it. There are many examples of things that make an interior just awful. So friends, if you liked this video, leave a comment telling us what you liked, share your examples, and we'll see you in the next videos.